So hi everyone. So my name is Jordan, and I'm working at University of Montreal on paleoecology questions. So I'm gonna tell you some research I did for my master thesis about the sugar maple stands marginal population formation throughout the Holocene in Western Quebec. So we're gonna talk about the last 10,000 years. So this is the one picture of Lake Labelle sugar maple stands we studied. So the main question is, when did this sugar maple stands established? So because we don't know really if a marginal population can be the result of a recent expansion or more a relic population, so the shrinkage of a larger population during the Holocene gave us this sugar maple stands, so like a relic population. And we do not know how this population survived or established this far north. So we have a few hypotheses about how the northern sugar maple stands established and survived. Probably it did during a warmer climate, during a period called the Holocene thermal maximum. So it was between 8,000 and 5,000 BP. So BP is for before present, because Acer saccharum is mostly a temperate species, so it was during a warmer climate. Possibly it was during a period where fire return intervals were longer, so less fire in the ecosystem, because Acer saccharum is not a species really adapted to fire ecosystem, to more fire-prone ecosystem, such as the boreal mixed-wood forest, where it's present actually, and possibly a higher proportion of deciduous species in the landscape. So this is the three hypotheses we have. Here you can see the three sites we sampled: Fur, Chasseur, and Labelle, which are located on a latitudinal gradient, where we have the most Acer saccharum at Fur, a bit less at Chasseur, where it's like at the edge of the distribution area, and at Labelle. So this is the photo I just showed you at the second slide, which is located maybe 50 to 70 kilometers from the edge of the distribution area. So to study this this dynamic, we did a coring at the three sites, sampling at the centimeter resolution at the lab. We did age model based on carbon-14 and 210 lead datation. We did pollen analysis, so this is a Acer saccharum pollen here, and we did charcoal analysis. So just one thing about the pollen analysis. One problem is that because pollen can be transported on long distance dispersal, it's always tricky to know if the species was there in the past just based on the pollen presence, because it can be like present but 100 to 200 kilometers away. So what I did to have like a guideline for the rest of the Holocene was to calculate a local threshold value just for Acer saccharum based on the last 200 years. So for every centimeter of the 200 years record, we have the pollen influx, and this is like just the mean of this pollen influx of the species. So you will see on the results this value, the local threshold value. So I jumps in. This is the result for Labelle. So from left to right, I'm going to show you what we got. Here is the main pollen taxa we can find in my core. So you have the blue line here is representing, so you have 10,000 years old here, and 0 is representing the present. So since 8,000 years ago, there is a decline of Pinus genus since 8,000 years ago. This is following like the pattern of the temperature reconstructed from chironomid. And here you get the pollen influx of Acer saccharum. I'm gonna come back to that later. You have here the charcoal accumulation rates and the fire reconstruction. So the fire return interval in years based on the charcoal accumulation rate. So here on the Acer saccharum pollen influx, we can see that there is a continuous pollen influx of sugar maple between 10,000 and 7,000 years ago. I will interpret that as a long dispersal, long pollen dispersal, because it's there is low chance that the sugar maple was actually present at this period of time, and so it's really close. This dashed line is representing the local threshold value. It's really beyond it. So this is mostly, apparently, it is long pollen dispersal. But around 4,000 years ago, the pollen influx of Acer saccharum is beyond the local threshold value, and it keeps to be above it for a long period of time. So I'm gonna take this time as the beginning of the establishment of the species. Here, if we look at the mean fire return interval before and after Acer saccharum establishment, we can see that there is a significant difference before and after. So during the Acer saccharum presence, there is a fire return interval of 125 years. So more fire during sugar maple presence. So it's the same for chasseurs. So the next one, the next population, the next site, sorry. Here we still got this decrease of the Pinus genus throughout the Holocene, represented by the blue line. We still have what appears to be long distance dispersal of Acer saccharum pollen, and then a presence with continuous pollen of the species around 5,000 years ago. If we look now at the mean fire return interval, there is not such a difference. There is not really a difference between the two. It's not statistical significance. Yeah, there is no statistical difference. And then for the last site, we still see this decrease in Pinus genus here. And for this site, it's a bit different, the local threshold value, because it's mostly representing a dominance value and not like a local presence of the species. But here, we mostly have like a regional presence during the first 1,000 years, then possibly the establishment of the species, and then a more dominant phase around 6,000 years ago. If we look at the mean fire return interval, there is no real difference between the two. So what we got in, I have to do a synthesis of this, is that, so when the first question was when the sugar maple established in this study region. So we got an establishment, early establishment at Fur Lake around 8,000 BP, and then an increase around 5,000, between 5,000 and 6,000 BP. At Chasseurs, there is an establishment at around 5,000 BP, and then at Label around 4,000 BP. This is happening at the end of the Holocene thermal maximum, and not during the Holocene thermal maximum as we thought. And it's happening also at the beginning of the neoglacial period, which is a colder period than the Holocene thermal maximum. If we look at the fire return interval, we can see that there is no statistical difference for the two southern sites, so Fur and Chasseur. Oops. But if we look at Label, so the northern site, we can see that there is a statistical difference. And finally, we can see that the species Acer saccharum establishment take place after a decrease of Pinus and an increase of Betula, which is another deciduous species, a dominant species in the ecosystem. So if we go back to the hypothesis I mentioned at the beginning, so it's not during a warmer climate, it's not really a longer fire interval. Actually, it seems that Acer saccharum was able to withstand with a shorter return interval at Label. But it's mostly a higher proportion of deciduous species and so a lower proportion of coniferous species that play a role into the sugar maple establishment and survival. So how does it play out? This is the main hypothesis we got. So during the first 2,000 years, well, between 8,000 and 6,000 BP, we had mostly a Pinus landscape, forest landscape dominated by Pinus genus. So it affects soil, like nutrients, availability, and there is like a bitter soil which is excluding Acer saccharum sealing, growth, and so on. So during this first period, there is like high combustibility in the landscape, and there is not such a good soil for Acer saccharum to establish in the north. Then there is a decrease of the Pinus genus and an increase of Betula, which will play a role of transition and facilitation during the first millennia, increasing the pH and bringing some nutrients, so fertilizing the soil, and also creating like fire breaks in the landscape, so there is not such a large fire possible, and then Acer saccharum will be able to survive in this northern ecosystem. So in conclusion, we can see that fires had no effect on the survival of northern sugar maple stands. The establishment of those sugar maple stands did not take place during the Holocene thermal maximum, mainly due to a process of exclusion driven by Pinus genus. And finally, the establishment and survival of northern sugar maple stand was mainly facilitated by the presence of these new species, mainly Betula, which diminished the landscape combustibility and enhanced the soil conditions. Thank you.